Well, finally today there can be no better place during this Overland Telegraph 150 years to launch a book than at this symposium, and we've already. Richard's doing something. All's well. We've already enjoyed a tantalising taste of Derek Pugh's passion and scholarship today. Now there's a whole book full of it that you can take away. It's my great pleasure now to ask to do the launching, to have come forward the great-great-grandson of Charles Todd, Julian Todd, who's with us today. Julian, if you'd ease your way forward. Julian is actually deputising for his dad, and Julian, we're very sorry that he couldn't make it.
Yeah, well, he and my mother came down with COVID last weekend. But the very good news is they're both doing exceptionally well. I spoke to them in the intervening session, and the good news is the antivirals are doing their job.
Great.
And yeah, Dad's very, very disappointed he couldn't be here.
Your dad and you, Julian, you have been long-time promoters of the need to recognise the significance, the impact of this amazing 19th century project. So it's wonderful to have you with us. Please do the deed.
Well, first, before I chat about Derek and his lovely book, I'd like to congratulate Susie, Richard, and Mac have done an exceptional and a very professional job putting together today. The website's extraordinary. It's been done entirely voluntarily, and I think, can we all give them a round of applause? Many hours of work and lots of conversations. Secondly, can I also thank URPS and also the University of South Australia for supporting us today. Sponsors are few and far and hard to find, and always gratefully received. And one last thing before I'm going to read my father's speech. 1866 was when the transatlantic cable connecting Newfoundland to Ireland was completed. 6 years later, and only 6 years later, Australia was able to communicate with the rest of the world. Indeed, you could send a telegram all the way from Sydney through to London, to Paris, to New York and San Francisco. And that was 1872. An extraordinary achievement in Victorian times, and something that clearly we should cherish and acknowledge. The 1873 South Australian wheat crop was sold to Europe because of that telegraph line. So not only was there the social impact and the ability to interact with family and governments around the world, but there was obviously a huge economic impact that came as a consequence of having that telegraph line in place. So much so that in 1942, when Darwin was bombed and Catherine was bombed, anyone tell me how they told Canberra that we'd been bombed by the Japanese? Morse code. A telegraph station. The STD telephone lines weren't actually commissioned in Darwin until April 1942. So that little bit of NBN infrastructure was being used very actively 70 years later after it had been commissioned. A non-trivial insight in terms of not only how lonely and how far afield Darwin or Palmerston was and has been, but how communication has linked the country together. So without further ado, my father's speech. First, on behalf of all of Charles and Alice's descendants, of whom at the last count there were 250, now 300, I'd like to thank the OT-150 committee for all their hard work and dedication in making this 150th anniversary so successful. I would also like to assure Mac Benoit, the coordinator of the committee, that there will be plenty of Todds around for the 200th anniversary. My wife and I came back to Australia in '72 in time for the centenary and brought 3 sons with us. They and their wives have presented us with 7 grandchildren who will be in their 70s for the 2072 start. Hopefully there will be more Todds by that term, so you can rest easy, Mac. I think you should hand over the mantle. Now I would like to congratulate and thank Derek Pugh again on behalf of Charles and Alice's descendants, and indeed all of us here, for his painstaking research, time and dedication writing 20 to the Mile, which is just so well illustrated. If there's a dinner to be had in November later this year, for his descendants, for those who worked on the line, this would be the go-to book to start for the search for the names and the anecdotes and the stories. Derek tells the story of one of the greatest engineering feats of the 19th century. From the beginning, when Charles Todd said in his farewell speech in London, his vision was to be part of the team connecting the Australian colonies to the developing worldwide telegraph network. The book is a great read and a comprehensive and detailed book all about the Overland Telegraph. It takes us from the early expeditions undertaken by John McDowell Stewart and successive governors, their support for Charles Todd, from acquiring the administration of the Northern Territory through to the intense commercial rivalry between South Australia and Queensland. And the story follows with a description of the construction of the line and brings to life all the associated hardships and difficulties, both from a management and personal perspective, together with individual stories. In fact, what comes out of the book is the dedication and loyalty of the teams under pressure whilst working in appalling conditions during the construction. And that dedication and loyalty to the line continues once it was operational, with many individuals spending years working on the line. This is covered by an up-to-date description of all the telegraph stations as they are today. Finally, my father would like to quote from the foreword by the 35th Governor of South Australia, His Excellency, the Honourable Hieu Van Lee. A book written with heart and admiration for those who brought the project to fruition. A lasting tribute to the inventiveness and the tenacity of the people behind the planning, building and execution of the Overland Telegraph. A true nation-building endeavour. Derek, thank you very much, and a round of applause. It's done a fantastic job.
Thanks indeed. And thank you very much for Julian for doing the job so well on behalf of your dad. And now that, of course, means the book is launched and you can buy one. So thank you very much, Julian.